Hello, this is Abby from ollieholly.com. In today's video, I will be showing you all of the yarn under, yarn over combinations for making single crochet stitches. With each method, I'll also be showing you the invisible decrease, just so that you can see how invisible the decreases actually are. And for those of you who are just starting your crochet journey, a single crochet is typically made with 2 loops. You start by inserting your hook into the next stitch, then wrap your yarn around your hook and pull a loop up. This is the first loop. Then wrap your yarn around your hook again and pull another loop through the 2 loops on your hook to complete the single crochet. Changing the way you wrap your yarn around your hook for each of these loops will change the look and characteristics of the stitch itself. There are 2 ways to wrap your yarn around your hook, and for most stitches, yarning over is the standard way to wrap your yarn. To yarn over, take your yarn and wrap it over the top of the hook, like so. The motion of this feels like you're taking the yarn from the back to the front. And to yarn under, take your yarn and wrap it under the hook and round to the back, like so. The motion for this feels like you're bringing the yarn from the front to the back. So that's yarn over, and this is yarn under. Throughout this video, I'm going to be using Paintbox Yarns Cotton in Aran weight. With that, I'm going to be using a 3.25mm crochet hook. I'm going to be sticking to this yarn and hook combo for all of the different single crochet methods. This way, I can show you how the method you use can affect the tension of your stitches. Timestamps will be in the description box down below if you want to skip to the one you're interested in. And at the end of the video, I will go over the properties of each method and compare them side by side just so that you can decide for yourself which method you prefer. The first single crochet method I'm going to be showing you is the standard single crochet stitch that most non-amigurumi crocheters will use. To make the standard single crochet, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over. So remember, you're wrapping the yarn from the back to the front, going over the top of the hook, and pull a loop up. You should now have 2 loops on your hook. Then yarn over one more time and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. Let's see that again. Insert into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull a loop up. Then yarn over and pull it through the 2 loops. To make the invisible decrease, start by inserting your hook into the front loops of the next 2 stitches. So insert your hook into the first front loop, then again into the next front loop. Next, yarn over, so remember you're wrapping the yarn over the hook, and pull a loop up through the 2 front loops. Now yarn over again and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. Let's see that again. Insert the hook into the front loops of the next 2 stitches, so that's 1 and 2, and yarn over and pull a loop up. Yarn over again and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. When you take a closer look at the yarn over invisible decrease, you'll see that it blends in really well. You can still make it out if you look really closely, but it kind of just looks like 2 stitches stacked on top of each other. Working the standard single crochet will give you V-shaped stitches. The standard single crochet stitches are a little bit looser when you compare them to the other methods. So if you plan to work the standard single crochet for amigurumi, make sure to go down a few hook sizes to avoid gaps between stitches. The next single crochet that I'm going to show you is the one that I prefer and use. I call it the X stitch, but I've seen people call it the false X stitch. Either way, this method produces a single crochet stitch that looks like an X. To work this single crochet stitch, we're going to yarn under for the first loop, then yarn over for the second loop. Insert your hook into the next stitch, Yarn under, so remember you're wrapping from the front to the back, going under your hook, and pull a loop up. Then yarn over and pull through the 2 loops on your hook. Let's see that again. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn under, so you're wrapping under the hook, and pull a loop up. Then yarn over, so you're wrapping over the hook from the back to the front, and pull a loop through the 2 loops on your hook. The invisible decrease when working with the yarn under, yarn over single crochet is worked more or less the same way as the invisible decrease for the standard single crochet. The only difference is that you start with a yarn under first, then yarn over for the second loop. So insert your hook into the front loops of the next 2 stitches like so. Then yarn under, remember you're wrapping under the hook, to pull a loop up. Then yarn over and pull through the 2 loops on your hook. Let's see that again. Insert your hook into the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. Yarn under, so remember you're wrapping under the hook to pull a loop up. Then yarn over and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. The invisible decrease for this single crochet isn't as invisible as the decrease for the first method, but it's still not as noticeable as a regular decrease. Working the yarn under, yarn over single crochet will give you X-shaped stitches. This method will create a slightly tighter stitch when compared to the standard single crochet. The next single crochet stitch is a yarn under single crochet. And I feel like I've seen more people use this method for making amigurumi lately. To work this single crochet, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn under, and pull a loop up. Then yarn under again, and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. Let's see that again. Insert into the next stitch, yarn under to pull a loop up, then yarn under again and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. The invisible decrease for this stitch is similar to the invisible decreases from the previous 2 methods. Start by inserting your hook into the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. Yarn under and pull a loop up. Then yarn under one more time and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. Let's see that again. Insert into the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. Yarn under to pull a loop up. Then yarn under again and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. Just like with the yarn under, yarn over method, the invisible decrease for the yarn under will not blend in fully, but you won't notice it unless you're really looking for it. Working the yarn under single crochet will give you X-shaped stitches just like with the yarn under, yarn over single crochet. This method will create a slightly tighter stitch when compared to the yarn under, yarn over single crochet. The final single crochet I'll be showing you today is the yarn over, yarn under single crochet. This is something I actually haven't seen anybody do, and that's probably because this is the most difficult one to work with the tension of it being so tight. But I figured I might as well try it so that I can include it in this video. Start by inserting your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull a loop up. Then you yarn under and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. Let's see that again. Insert into the next stitch, yarn over and pull a loop up, then yarn under and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. To decrease, insert your hook into the front loops of the next 2 stitches, yarn over and pull a loop up. then yarn under and pull it through the 2 loops on your hook. So as you can see, the invisible decrease is worked in the exact same way as the previous methods, but you just have to make sure to yarn over first, then yarn under. This single crochet method creates a really tight single crochet stitch that looks like a V in the front. So here are the 4 balls that I made with the different single crochet methods. I used the same yarn and hook size for all 4 methods and tried my best to keep my tension as even as I could. And right off the bat, you can see that the sizes of the balls are not the same. The ball made with the standard single crochet is the biggest one. And that's because when you yarn over, you're wrapping more yarn around the hook, which makes the tension around the hook a little bit looser. All of the other methods include a yarn under loop somewhere in the construction of the stitches. And when you yarn under, you're wrapping less yarn around the hook, which makes the tension tighter. And with tighter tension, your final product will be smaller. Out of the 4 methods for making single crochet, 2 of them have stitches that look like V's, and 2 of them have stitches that look like X's. The loop that determines what your stitch looks like is the first loop that you make. If you yarn over for the first loop, your single crochet will look like a V. And if you yarn under for the first loop, your single crochet will look like an X. The stitch that's easiest on your hands to make out of the 4 is the standard single crochet. Since you're yarning over for both loops when making the standard single crochet, the stitch itself is pretty loose and easier to work into. I personally found that as long as the second loop is a yarn over, it's a little easier on your hands. And that's because the second loop makes up the top of the next stitch. So when it's looser, it's easier to insert your hook into the stitch for the next round. When the second loop is a yarn under, the space for you to insert your hook into for the next round becomes a little tighter, which makes it more difficult to insert your hook into. The most difficult one to work with out of the 4 is definitely the yarn over, yarn under. And I think that's because the first loop, which is a yarn over, uses more yarn. And when you make the second loop, which is a yarn under, it creates a tighter stitch. And the space for you to insert your hook into for the next round gets taken up by the extra yarn from the initial yarn over. Another thing I wanted to test was to see if any of the stitches reduce the lean when worked in continuous rounds. If you make amigurumi, you'll notice that your stitches don't stack straight on top of each other, so your stitches will naturally lean to one side. I wanted to see if by using the different single crochet methods it will make a difference, and the answer to that is actually not really. For my tension, the lean on all of the balls land between 82 to 85 degrees. And I'm quite surprised by that because I thought that with the tighter stitches it would lean less, but it actually doesn't really make a huge difference. And finally, since chenille yarn has been so popular for amigurumi lately, I figured I would make some balls with the different single crochet methods just so that I can show you what the stitches look like with chenille yarn. With chenille yarn, the stitch itself isn't as defined, but you can still see the shape of the stitches. And just like with the cotton yarn, you can still see a very obvious size difference between the standard single crochet and the other balls. The one thing I do need to note is that when I was working with the yarn over, yarn under single crochet, my hook shredded up the chenille yarn slightly. So when working with chenille yarn, you just want to make sure that the stitch you use isn't super tight. After experimenting with the different combinations for making single crochet, I'm personally going to stick to my favorite method for making single crochet, which is the yarn under, yarn over method. I like that the stitch is tighter than a standard single crochet, and I like the X look for my amigurumi stitches because I think it looks neater. It's also a lot easier on my hands than the yarn under, and the yarn over, yarn under. Ultimately, the single crochet method you use is up to you. I've heard a lot of people talk about how one way is better than the other, and that's just not true. You should always use the method that you are most comfortable with, and most importantly, the method that doesn't hurt your hands. Which method do you use and why do you prefer it? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, you might like a few of my other videos too. Please consider subscribing and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye!